Hello.
Hey there, can you hear me?
Hey, Tanya, I think you're muted.
You were right. I joined in and I wasn't muted.
I do that all the time. I've even started presentations being muted before.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it happens. So hey Jason.
Hey, Tanya. That's kind of the standard line these days. You're mute.
You're muted. I know. We would have thought we would have learned it in 2020 and in 2021 and in 2022, but no. Project management, we're still all figuring it out, you know.
Now, the worst thing is the window with the video gets buried, and all of a sudden your microphone is on, and then you don't even realize that everybody else is still listening, hearing what you're screaming about.
How's your weather over there, Jason?
It's actually pretty good. It's almost like spring.
Really?
Yeah, it's like today was 7 degrees. It's like balmy. And so 7 degrees, that's close to about 45, 50 in Fahrenheit. So that's a pretty big change.
I remember when I was coming back from the global summit, and I'd had a lot of friends that were at that summit that were from Canada, from the Alberta chapter.
Right.
And they were going back to -22. And I was like, oh man, it's going to be like 50 degrees in Louisiana. And they're
yeah, it was like that. We had a couple of weeks ago, we had that vortex, and it was windy, and like I went out to just get something from the car, nearly froze myself in there, because at first it was like 2 foot of snow that had like it was 2 foot to start with, where the drifts happened. So it was like almost onto your, like up to your thigh, you were buried in, and you're trying to get out of there, and your snow gets into your boots. And it was then pretty much everybody kind of stayed in for 3 days, and then they kind of all of a sudden now it's balmy, and now our trees don't know what the hell to do. Is it spring yet, or?
Yeah. So, well, we actually had, I know I let you know this a little bit earlier, we actually had about 160 people that signed up. And last year I tracked the metrics like the entire year, so it was like I can see the numbers and go, okay, it might be about 60 to 70% of what signed up, that shows up on the night of. So it's always kind of interesting to see how that plays out too. Like I communicated a little bit earlier, during this first part, everybody's joining in. We're a little bit early because I know I communicate 5:30, and then everybody joins in, and we typically start about 5:40 or so. Yeah. But this is our chance just to welcome people. I see some of the chats going on. So Austin, Texas, greetings from Alberta. Oh no, y'all are going through -22 again next week. That's Jeremy Rivers. So Jeremy, if you have a chance to take yourself off of mute, are you in the same chapter with Candida and Ben?
Sorry about that. Yeah, I'm still at work. I am. I haven't done as much in, unfortunately, in Alberta as I have with your wonderful chapter, because I love the courses you have.
Thank you. I do have to give a lot of props to Candida, though. They've really been, like, I've been seeing all their activity on LinkedIn, and she and I have been presidents kind of for about the same term, so I'm seeing a lot of activity on their side as well. And that's just kind of a piece of advice just to people joining in the phone in general, is just even to follow other PMI chapters. Of course, I'm partial to ours and I want people to join us, but there's always other good chapters that's got great content that's going on, that's different, that provides an additional opportunity for people that are looking to get their PDUs to get that. Now, like I put in the communication, those of you that are members of the Baton Rouge chapter, within 3 to 5 business days will have the PDUs submitted on your behalf. And those of you that are guests, there will be a code at the end so that we can give that to you to self-report. So, hi, Shala.
Hi there.
How are you doing tonight?
I'm good. How are
So
you?
for everybody on the line, this is our VP of Professional Development, Shala Canifax. So,
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
and let's see. All right, we got a bunch coming in the chat. Randall, I see you're in awe of the weather that they're having in in Alberta. I've had a few of them out there say you should just come and visit, and I'm like, that's gonna have to take place when the weather is warmer. So for people joining in that may not be from Louisiana, so wearing my beads, next week we will actually be celebrating Mardi Gras in Louisiana. That's going to happen on Tuesday. So if y'all are connected with people in Louisiana on LinkedIn and see posts with a lot of beads and a lot of floats, that's what we're doing in these parts. So, hey Chip, how are you doing? Chip is out in New Orleans. Are you going to be doing Mardi Gras next week?
Yeah, I ride in Demian.
Okay, cool.
What's
Very cool.
the significance of beads?
The beads are trinkets that we throw to the great groups and people who stand along the parade route. And people in New Orleans watch parades, say like the Rose Parade or parades in New York, and nobody gets anything, and we just don't understand it. You don't have parades in New Orleans without throwing stuff. And the stuff we throw, it goes everywhere from beads to stuffed animals to doubloons, which are little coins that are minted for the parades, the aluminum coins. So people who go to parades in New Orleans get stuff.
Okay, so it's nothing
Yeah,
sacred about.
Yes, sir. The
Yeah.
beads are meant to represent like, for example, the purple beads are meant to represent Christianity and faith, and
Okay.
the
No, it's
gold
not.
beads are meant to represent wealth.
No, it's not. The purple is not Christianity. Because
Or was it
I'm
no,
Jewish.
not Christianity, Catholicism.
No, sorry, still not.
Oh yeah.
Okay, there you go. Now, there you go,
Oh,
Chip.
yes.
You opened
Now we have
Purple is royalty. Purple is royalty. Gold is gold. And green is, I forget that one. I'd have to look it up.
Sustainability.
It's
How's
royalty.
that? We can make it green sustainable.
Well,
Now,
don't
thank
forget
you,
don't
Brian,
forget they
for
throw
joining
toilet
us.
paper too.
Right.
Okay.
The new thing is to try and throw sustainable stuff, because last year they pulled 480 tons of beads out of our sewer system.
Oh, wow.
That's not good.
No, it's not.
We'll be having some here in Lafayette as well. So most of the Louisiana towns, now it is not on a scale that's in New Orleans. And last year I had rode in a Lafayette parade. This year, I think, actually off on next Tuesday. So probably going to try to go out to one of the smaller towns, just do something like on a small scale, but kind of get a little bit of the experience too. So I'm technically a couple of hours away from New Orleans. So. All right, well, let me see. I just wanted to make a couple of really quick announcements. And I know Emily's not on the line just yet. She's our VP of membership, but just wanted to give an update that we had, I guess it's been a couple of weekends now. We had a give back volunteer program that took place at the Greater Baton Rouge Food Bank. So there was 15 of us there that spent 4 hours, got the 4 PDUs. That was a great opportunity. So any of y'all that are on the line, I'm having trouble scanning and keeping track right now, but I just wanted to say thank you for that. And just to the people on the line, we are planning virtual sessions for all of 2023, as well as Shala is helping me tremendously in the Baton Rouge area, try and find different locations and get a different lineup for our in-person meetings. Most of our virtual meetings are going to be on Tuesday. The only reason that this one was on Wednesday was because we realized that it was on Valentine's Day yesterday. So we kind of thought that there was a chance that could impact attendance. So we moved that. And for those of you that do join us in person, we'll be having that next Thursday at Cafe American. It's going to be a man named James Taylor from Franklin Associates is talking about the I-10 widening project. And the only last little blurb on that is we've got to give the restaurant a 72-hour notice. So anybody that can attend in the area and wanting to go, please sign up before Monday.
And if you've lost the link, tomorrow I'll be sending out a notification reminding everybody to register. So
Right.
just keep an eye out on your email for tomorrow and you will get a link to sign up, or you can always go to the the Baton Rouge PMI chapter website. And I believe it's posted on our page. So you could also sign up there.
It is. And quick plug for our next month's speaker virtual, Andrea Pratt is on the line with us as well, joining from the Bahamas. Her information's out there on the site, and she's going to be talking to us next month about how life is a project, manage it well, which I love. As much as I love the hard skills and the technical, sometimes I like very much when I hear project management translated to real life circumstances and metaphors. So looking forward to that as well. Well, it looks like we're up to about 55, so we've still got a couple of more minutes left. And I know people will kind of keep trickling in. Did want to allow a few minutes. Is there anybody recently, and y'all can say this either on the line or in the chat, that's recently earned the PMP or any other PMI certification? Henry.
Yeah, I got it in October. So
Okay. Congratulations. So
it was quite agile considering I come from the hardware world.
okay. So I've heard it's changed a lot, and that's kind of a current initiative. We've got that LinkedIn group, and for me, the best way to try and help people, because I know we've got several on the line, including Brian Turner, that's interested in studying for the PMP. My philosophy is that it's probably a greater success factor to try and link up people that have just taken it recently and people that are in the process of studying for it currently, so people can have study buddies, because my experience from 2014 on the 5th edition of the PMBOK is completely different than what people are going through. And while the chapter can provide a lot of resources, it's tough for us to have all of the answers and present the content in the meetings and things of that nature, but we try to link people up together to help them out in their study initiatives. So.
Hello, Tanya. Made it through the DASSM recently.
Did you really, Bob? Congratulations. When did you pass
Had a
that?
great refresher course.
Okay. So you passed it recently, or you just did the coursework?
Certainly did. Passed it recently. They recommended
Congratulations.
taking the test within about 3 to 5 weeks after we took the course, and that's exactly what we did.
Okay.
John Steinbeck had a course, a refresher on it.
Okay. And I'm needing to come out with more content on that, just in the chapter LinkedIn. Like I said, I think we do have a Facebook and we do have an Instagram now, so if y'all have an opportunity to look those up, we're working on getting some of the information on Facebook is on the website. We're working on getting the Instagram information out there and creating flyers. But by far, our LinkedIn group, definitely has the most people in it. And Crystal, I do see that. I'm going to share that in a little bit, you know, once Jason starts, and put that information in the chat for everybody too. So, you know, but that's kind of a conduit. And I tell people, you know, for a long time, it was my voice and Kim Plant's voice in there, and not many other people were posting. And I was like, we're not the controllers of the information. We need other people chiming in and sharing experiences and helping one another out. So. Well, with that, I'd like to go ahead and introduce Jason and get him started. So tonight we've got Jason Uppal. Jason is from Ontario, Canada. Jason and I have actually known one another for years, you know, and he talked to me about, you know, looking into an opportunity for speaking for the chapter. He's worked as a contractor before for Blue Cross Blue Shield. And he's actually currently a technical architect and a product owner for a company named WhiteSparrow. And tonight he'll share his experiences with you on digital transformation and lived experiences. So, Jason, and just let me know if you need me to do anything special on my end to share, but I think it should be set where you'll be able to.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Tanya. Let me start the sharing. Let's see how this works.
Got it.
You should see my screen. Okay, and there's a videos on the side here. Is that bothering anybody, or are they just on my screen?
Hey, Jason, I
Jason.
think you're showing us your personal screen for the presentation, not the deck.
Okay, let's see. Let's try that again.
If you go to display settings at the top, you can swap the views. That way we'll see the larger view and you'll see the smaller view.
Right, the one with your notes.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, that's what you're seeing. All right, let's see. I have not used this in a while, so screen share. So share. I wanted this one. No, maybe this one. Little technical glitch. Pause sharing. Stop sharing.
It's okay. I had presented once before and I had the exact same thing too.
Okay,
And I
now
always
stop.
have to remember it.
Yeah, I think it's sometimes the different platforms kind of do different things. Okay, start share screen. Then it says, that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to do how many windows that I have open here. Okay, just give me one more second. Let me try one more thing. Advance. All right, that did not work. So let me close this guy. So now if I do this, all right, what do you see now? You still see the same thing?
It looks like really zoomed in text.
Huh. Okay, you know what? We're gonna do simply. We're gonna do easier way. Let me change this settings. View. What do you see now?
There we go.
Yep.
I think you got it, Jason.
You're good? Okay, perfect. Finally, got the little technical. Now I see on my screen the videos on the side. You guys don't see that on the screen, right? It's not distracting?
No, we just see a slideshow right now.
Perfect. Okay, that's what we want. Well, okay. Thank you very much, Tanya, for inviting me to the session. It's a pleasure to be back with the people in Baton Rouge. It's been many years ago when I was down there, and my personal experiences of the city are running in about 100 degree, and first and last time went to a shooting range. So, and haven't done anything since then. I probably will never touch a weapon again in my life, but it was a one-time life experience. And I met a lot of wonderful people, including Tanya and the others in the city, and went to my first Mardi Gras and everything that you know about it. So it was a beautiful city, and I enjoyed it tremendously. With that being said, let me share a couple of topics. So, you know, we're all sort of change practitioners one way or the other. What I wanted to talk more about with you today is that we drive change in our roles, mostly where we work, but what about where we live? So that's basically subject of our conversation today. And with that, I just want to give you a couple of disclaimers. First is I'm not endorsing any product or anything. I'm not being paid by anybody. I have no commercial interest or any of this conversation that we're having today, or any of the topics or products that I might refer to. And all the experience that I'm going to share with you today are mine. I've been at this thing for nearly about 30 years, and I worked as an engineer for the first 15 years as an automation person, doing robots and assembly lines and so forth for the last 15 years as a sort of general enterprise architect, solution architect, technical architect, whatever you wanted to call it, with all kind of different things. So what I'm going to share with you is basically from my accumulated experience for the last 30 years. It's been a long time, and you're going to see probably a lot of reference to my age. So that's where things are. Feel free to chime anything in chat. I'd like to have a two-way conversation, and or just unmute yourself and ask a question. Yeah, we're doing this virtually, but it doesn't have to be virtual. It's not a one-way thing. It's more of us having a discussion together on a topic that I'm very passionate about. I wanted to share my passion with you to hopefully we will have some common ground. So that's our topic. So let me start. So let's look at this thing one thing at a time. When we're talking about a change, whether it's a small change or big change, sometimes we think about a budget determines size of the change. Often, it doesn't. Budget has nothing to do with the magnitude of the change or impact of the change that can deliver. We're all practitioners of change, and we all do it at where we work. And by all means, we are very good at what we do, and that's why people have us around. And PMI has like several million people worldwide who are certified and practitioners, and we have millions and billions of dollars worth of projects going on. So things do work. So given overall we're good at delivering projects, that whether that is a hitting on time, on budget, or meeting some scope that we have, we do validate our scope in the UATs and so forth. But there's also something else that we wanted to look at it from the change point of view. So if we look at it across the life cycle of when initiation and planning and so forth, what you guys live and breathe by, but there's something called on y-axis, enthusiasm for change, which generally represents how enthusiastic people are about the change and how impactful that change will be and what the value the change will deliver to the organization and so forth. So sometimes this happens. It's quite normal. Then we start very hyper and pretty excited about it. At the end of the day, when we go live, there's a certain amount of acceptable enthusiasm. That's because that's about all enthusiasm is required, acceptable results. And that's quite common, and there's nothing wrong with it. That's all change was expected. Giving baseball analogy, sometimes soft single is all you need. You don't need to hit a home run every time. But we, over the years, we are pretty good at delivering that too. And there's sometimes when we needed a little bit more enthusiasm from people, we have this whole series of organization change management techniques that are also available to us as a PMs and professionals. So we can bring those ones in and then deliver some additional change when it's needed. But sometimes it's a dramatic change is needed, and that time we sort of go one more step and we engage everybody and engage them from day one and so forth. We keep them engaged. So there's a lot of techniques that we have to manage the change we deliver at work, depending on what the needs are. So given all of that, we're reasonably good at it. Yeah, there's a few areas we can do better, but by and large, it's pretty good progress that we have so far. But now I'm thinking of is that if we look at that's how well we do delivering change at work. What about places where we work? So where we live, sorry. So like what kind of change am I talking about in the places where we live? And these are big topics like policing, healthcare, education, justice, government, and public trust. And even if that topic wasn't big enough, let's go one step further, even climate change, geopolitical conflicts and refugees and third world debt and wealth siphoning to top 1%, resignation culture. So you can name it. There's a whole series of other topics that are also in our rhyme and possibilities, because what happens is that if you're a change practitioner, but you're not a change practitioner only at work, this is where we live. And if we don't do something about that, who's going to do it? So it comes down to is that like my mantra all my life has been is that learn what you're doing. And once you learn it, share with others. And in that whole mindset is that I'm a pretty positive person overall, and I look at half glass full all the time, and I'm thinking, oh, it's okay, but there's got to be something in here that we can drive the change from. So I have one chat here. No problems. So that's basically what I'm looking at. It's okay, we work, we do a good job, and then what do we live? How about some of these topics? And these topics, when you think about it, they sound like all the classical definition of a wicked problem. Like wicked problems that you guys probably all seen in the PMI literature, and it says, problems that have no solution, until you have a solution, you don't know what the problem is. And when you have a problem, you have no solution for it. It has no beginning, has no end. It's one of those wicked problems. So these all look like wicked problems, but wicked problems also need solving too. So that's one of our topic today, is that when we're talking about where we work and where we live, this is kind of change what I'm talking about here. So then goal of our conversation today is that we have, on one hand, where we work, we do in digital transformations all the time. We design thinking applications using, we want to create new products and services. We upgrading technology stacks, not a problem. We know how to do all of that. That's what I kind of highlighted, is that it's a green. We can do that thing with the eyes closed. And what about on the other side? We have a whole series of things that we can do where we live. But in here, we have this chasm. And what I wanted to discuss with you today is that how do we actually apply our project management skills, our change practitioner skills, to not only do what we do at work, but also where we live. And that sort of became an important topic for me. So here's one to pause for a minute, is when you think about where we work, that's one set of work, where we live is another set of work. When you see all these opportunities that are available to us to work in where we live, what comes to mind? Is this ours? Do we have the skills? Should we do something about it? Because my question really is, if not us, then who? I don't see any other change practitioners out there in the world that can do this kind of work. So that's a question for all of us. If not us, then who? So I really would love to hear, when you see something like this, what comes to mind? What do you think? What could be in your way? What could be prevented? What could we do as a group? Because we are 4+ million people around the world who are project managers. That's a pretty large workforce, and we are the experts of delivering change. And perhaps we need to do something about it. So that's kind of where my topic today is, that we are good at doing change at work. What about where we live? So that's the subject that has been near and dear to me. So does that give you an idea? Is that what am I talking about when we're talking about where we work plus where we live?
It does. I'm going to chime in. It actually, it aligns really heavily with one of the very, very many, because PMI has got a lot of different initiatives, but one of them that I first heard about in 2019 was, the Pledge for Social Good and the UN Sustainable Goals. And there are 17 different goals that are on there. And so I actually, in my role, it's a lot of times I'm not the holder of all the information. I have to go back to PMI National and ask a lot of different questions and a lot of different angles. But one of them with the volunteer give back that we just had, that was at the food bank. So it would fit into like the hunger initiative. And again, I mean, it's 15 people, but 15 people work together collaboratively over 4 hours, even in one day, can make a slight difference. So they told me, yes, that aligns with the social good initiative, and we can pledge our hours. And even as a chapter, I know we're planning at least 3 more social good events. I'm leaning on Emily to help me, or when she decides which events those will be, we'll communicate them. But yes, I just wanted to throw that out there because I can see where you're going with that, and it's a natural segue. So
perfect. Thank you. So let me next share with my experiences. I'm just going to give you a sort of snapshot of 4 projects. And this goes way back. This is probably before some of you were even born. So I've been, as I said, I've been at this thing for a long time. So in 1990, when I first started as an engineer, I worked in a manufacturing company. We had a hell of a time, or probably was very bad health and safety record in the plant. So people were getting hurt left, right, and center. So they asked me to run the project and make the place safer. Okay, but that sounds easier than said than done. Plus, being young and stupid, I didn't know any better. So I basically did what you're supposed to do, is instead of finding cheap solutions, and I went to people and started engaging people. And then one of the challenges that we had is that majority of the people who was on the shop floor didn't speak English, didn't write English. So I said, I don't care whether you write English or not, just write it in whatever language that you write. What do you think we should do? So we started having a flood of ideas. So after about a few 6 months or 12 months, we started implementing all these ideas that we have, and the more things we implemented, the more things came through. So at the end of the day, not only we improved the safety in the plant, we improved the quality of the product that we were making, we improved the productivity of the place we were making, and people were generally more happier. And that's all good and dandy. Then, like somebody made more money at the end of the day, and life is wonderful. But what happened is one day this woman came up to me, and she's a very shy person, hardly ever said anything to me the whole time that I was working with them for nearly 6 months. She said, ever since we've been working on the safety project, when I go home now, when I try to pick up my son, my shoulder doesn't hurt anymore. And I thought to myself, holy Jesus, I'm a 24-year-old punk who just wants to do nothing other than I thought it was engineering was a cool thing. All of a sudden I thought, I just did something. I actually affected somebody's life. Then I kind of ever since then, it got stuck with me. and say, you know what, if I do a little bit more than just minimum required, I can actually affect somebody's life. Like then all these years, and I've been always kind of thinking about it and saying, you know, a little bit more could bring so much positivity to somebody. And wasn't ever in scope not to hurt and affect her shoulder when she goes back home, pick up her son. But that was a kind of that aha moment that happened in my experience. And I said, okay, there's something in it. But back in 1990, and then we kind of tried to do this kind of many times. And some places we succeed reasonably, some places we miserably failed, and so forth. You know, that's just generally how the project management goes, is that sometimes you succeed, sometimes you fail. You know why you succeeded, you also know why you failed. So taking another similar example, back in 2015, I was in healthcare, doing a project in healthcare. So in here, our scope of our work is to improve the interprofessional communication around a patient, like doctors talking to nurses, nurses talking to therapists, and therapists talking to pharmacists, and so forth. So it was basically, we built a system that would allow us people to communicate with each other through text messages. Now, it's a brainiac idea a long time, 2015, but it seems pretty reasonable now. So when we sort of implemented that system first time around, and then we did the same thing, we start asking people what else gets in your way. So then we learned more. Then all of a sudden, what happens, more we engaged people, more we learned from them. And then all of a sudden it came to and say, you know what? If you look at all the data that you have in the system, based on our interprofessional communication around the patient, and based on the diagnosis that a patient have, based on the medication that they're on, we can actually predict what could possibly go wrong with this patient at the beginning of the shift. Because most accidents and adverse events in hospitals happen with the shift change. Because the shift change, staff doesn't know what's going on with the patients. That's when things fall into the cracks. After 3-4 hours, everybody don't stop to speed. They know exactly which patient is at where. So what we be able to do with this thing, by just getting people engaged, really truly understanding what could possibly go wrong with the patient. Let the staff know that this patient has this potentially could go wrong with it, and also at the same time recognize what are that nurses or therapists skill level, and give them a 5-minute refresher on the skill to refresh their skills and say, this is what you do in this kind of conditions. So that all happened because we engaged people. But then going back to the similar thing is then back in 2020, now we are in COVID. I don't know about in the US, but in Canada, when COVID hit, one of the worst hit places were our long-term care facilities. Like we had nearly more than 50% of our deaths to COVID were in long-term facilities. So we started looking at it and said, well, look, how do we look at this long-term facility through the lens of getting everybody's perspective on it? So that was in 2020. And then one step further in 2022, this came around policing. And say, what are people's experiences with the policing? Now, this we're talking about a Canadian policing, and I don't know much about the US policing system, but in Canada, we just has just as big a problem as anywhere else with the policing. And it's not anybody's fault. That's just the way the system is. So we started looking at the policing. So looking at these 4 or 5, this is when I just shared with you, about 20, 30 other projects that I've been a part of for the last 30 years, something came to mind and said, well, you know what? What's a common thread between all of them? If we do our job, we can do a lot more than just minimum required. And then what we thought, you know what? We have learned something over the years. We can do better than what we're doing. And then we kicked off a project called the Project WhiteSparrow back in 2019.
I did have a question that came through in the chat.
Yeah.
And I should have asked you this earlier too, if it was okay to interject, but
Sure,
this one
absolutely.
was from your work safety. This comes from Sean Liu.
Mhm.
And he had asked, did you get any pushback from any implementing those new ideas for safety at the plant, and how did you overcome it?
Actually, the two things happened on that thing is that the first one is that if we didn't get our act together, we were having millions of dollars liability that nobody wanted to undertake. So that was one problem. So financially, there was a big incentive to do something about it. And the other one is that pushback that was potentially could come from people, but people were part of it. So we didn't force things on them. We just asked people and said, what do you do differently? And they were little ideas, but they were dramatic ideas. Like sometimes we came up with these, we read those notes from people that people just started putting suggestion boxes in a piece of paper, on a piece of paper, and we started rewarding people for it. But sometimes we would read that thing through the translator and say, holy crap, why didn't we think of this thing? We're supposed to be the engineers and so forth, but we weren't standing at the line for 8 hours and 12 hours a day. So there was no pushback from the senior leadership because they knew it needed to be done. But there was no pushback by and large from most of the people. But there was a pushback from few individuals. As a result of everybody getting engaged, they were losing the power. So, you have two choices with those kind of people. You openly and honestly have a very sincere conversation with them, trying to understand their points of view and trying to incorporate them and trying to put them in the front as much as you possibly can, because that's what they're longing. But at the same time, sometimes you just basically have to cut them loose too, because you can only have one person holding up the show for so long. If somebody doesn't stop talking negative things, you have to stop them. And the reasonableness most of the time works, but sometimes it doesn't. So that was an idea. Like we had enough support, but we have because I was young, and I for a 24-year-old talking to a 50-year-old, the best thing you can do is say, pretend that you know nothing. And then not only people tell you what the problem is, they also tell you what the solution is, because I didn't know anything. That was my first job, and the first 3 months, and I thought I was going to fly airplanes after I graduated, and all of a sudden I'm on a production line and building plungers, and I didn't know anything about it. So I think my response to your question would be, listen honestly and see other person's point of view, because that's all they're really looking for. So given all of these experiences, so we kicked off this project called the Project WhiteSparrow. Now, what is a Project WhiteSparrow? So first we said, but you know what, now after all these years, we had this experience is that one of the organizations said, well, if you start engaging people, they'll flood you with the suggestion, you would know what to do with them. Well, okay, that's a problem. We know how to handle that problem. And so what else? So the next thing you know, what we built a system that looks and feels like LinkedIn, but isn't owned by anybody. So we have no intention of owning this thing. We said, okay, we will build a public social platform that isn't owned by any one company. We will use it as a community platform, and it will remain as a community platform. But at the same time is that take away all the negatives of the social media platform that we have today, like clustering people into likes, that you like something and you have a garbage in there. And people who are members are real people. We wanted to hear people's experiences, not just hearsay. So we created a platform. And now this wasn't something that we went out to looking for money for this platform. I know about half a dozen so people who are like me in my age group and been at this thing for many years, basically got together and said, well, okay, we wanted to do this. Next question came, how much money do we need? We said, okay, well, how about if we put $50,000 into the pot? And the only thing that we needed money for is development, because we didn't have anybody, we didn't know how to write a code. And we paid somebody to do the development and the hosting and a little bit of marketing. So we put a $50,000 together in 2020, we still have 40 left. So it wasn't the money that we needed. So money wasn't the reason. We thought we would need a lot more money. But then when our main developers found out that what we're doing, the price became a hell of a lot cheaper and the quality became a hell of a lot better. So we're a social media platform which is running in software as a service. And next thing is that, well, okay, there's going to be processes in this thing, and so, well, we're not going to invent a new process that people don't know how to execute. There's not be teaching of new process. We said we will use existing process, how we define strategies, how we do projects, and how we do analysis, and how we do architecture. Well, so all of those things we will use the existing methods that I already have. So that's basically Project WhiteSparrow that got kicked off. It's not owned by anybody, and everything that is in it is owned by individual whose experiences they are. There's no sharing of the data with anybody, and none of that, because we're not a marketing company. We are a company that helping drive change better. So that's WhiteSparrow. I see some chats in there. Tanya, are there any questions?
I don't think there's any new questions that
Okay.
have come through.
All right. So now let me show you. This is not a demo. So I'm going to show you, how does WhiteSparrow work? So here's what happens. And when you have a project, you have, whether it's a strategy or a project, whatever you have an idea what you're doing something about. Just like LinkedIn, we allowed the PMs or anybody else in saying, create a thread just like you do on LinkedIn and share the thread with people. And that stimulates some interest in people. When people have that stimulated interest, then what platform does, shares that stimulated idea with your staff, your partners, and current and your future customers, and your senior management and regulators, people who know where the technology is going, special interest groups. So whoever you have in the platform, you can search them and you can share them. If it's within your company, you share within people in your company. But if it's a broad idea, it's like a general public thing, you can share with the general public. So once you share this idea with them, and then what happens is that behind the scene, people start sharing their ideas. Like I've seen on LinkedIn, somebody posts something on LinkedIn. Next thing you know, there are 200 comments on that post. And if you look at those comments on the post, some of them are incredibly intelligent, foresighted thinking that give you a lot more deep insight what's happening. But nobody's doing anything with it other than Microsoft. So all of a sudden we post something, we got 200 comments and ideas and on this thing, and what's people's experiences around this thing, and we do nothing with it. So that's kind of what we did. And say, okay, you know what, let's take this, the whole idea. What we will do, we'll take a look at these inputs that are coming in. We will apply the machine learning algorithms that LinkedIn has and the other people have. Their dime a dozen. They're not proprietary technologies anymore. Like the entire machine learning algorithm costs us like $25 a month. And you have a library of things that you can use in it. So what we did then, we said, okay, we'll get all these experiences into this thing, and we synthesize them in a way, then we will allow then the people who are architecting your solution and your roadmap, give them to ability to constantly update the roadmap and create a release plan. So now you got a roadmap that is constantly getting feedback from people. More you do, more you engage, more people share with you. And as a result of what happens, the projects from delivery stream point of view is that some could be agile projects, some could be waterfall, and it doesn't matter what it is. So all these projects, as they're getting done, they're pulling from the roadmap that is constantly getting updated by the lived experiences of people. So there's nothing new that as a process-wise we have done. Only thing that we did is pull the people into share their lived experience around the context that you're working on. and process them in real time with the machine. And that way you can actually process them, incorporate them into your project faster. So that's really how the WhiteSparrow works.
Did get a question in the
Sure.
chat, and this may be for after the presentation, if it's
Sure.
feasible. You know, if you can show us an example of WhiteSparrow in action, and that comes from Dean Mallory in Lafayette.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see how that goes. So
Okay.
so we can, like, if not today, then I can show you that. Like, we can do another session or something. But I wanted to give you an idea, is to say, okay, so this is how. Just imagine it's LinkedIn, except that you control the LinkedIn. You control all the feedback that comes to you, and we work within it. So that's how it works. So then let me give you an idea. So we're like nothing but a change where we work. So what organizations have strategies. Strategies are either they're improving efficiency, or you're doing what you do today, you're doing it better, or you're creating new products and services. You still need an input from lots of people, more input that you can get, the better the products that you can have. If you think about all the design thinking doesn't happen just because the two people sitting in the room doing design thinking. Otherwise, you're going to be designing the wrong product. You need hundreds of people to input and say how people are actually going to be using what you're thinking of. What is the problem people are trying to solve? And another thing that is what's happening in a lot of an organization, their strategies, they are being forced to think outside their value chain. Like corporate social responsibility is a big thing. Like if you go to any company's website, they have a page on it called corporate social responsibility. On that bloody page, that what annoys me the most is they have allocated hundreds and thousands of dollars for projects. But they're not doing anything with those projects. They're not doing any projects. They basically at the end of, and like I worked with 3 banks in Canada. All they've done at the end of the year, when they take all the money and give it to United Way. Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with United Way. There's a lot of better way you can do with that money, especially if your people are involved. So what we did in this case is that we take strategies and whatever you have, we engage people, we learn from their experiences, we enhance the roadmap, and all we do at the end of the day, we enthusiasm for change. When that enthusiasm for change goes up, like if you have a project, nobody's sharing any of the lived experiences with you, something is wrong. Because there is no enthusiasm, nobody cares about this project. And that becomes your responsibility as a change practitioner to find out why is that nobody cares about it. And so now we have another metric to deal with, is that if nobody's learning and nobody engaged with you on the project, maybe nobody really cares. So that's how the change works. So let me show you on this particular area. We did this one project is that the organization had a plan. Basically, all they wanted to do is upgrade the technology stack. That's an easy thing to do. We do that with the blindfolded every day and say, well, this system is going to go obsolete. We're going to upgrade it. So they basically got one of those big companies with the 3-letter acronyms, and they came in and said, yeah, we can upgrade you to a latest and greatest. And that will have all your security threats will be gone, and your obviously technology will be gone, and you will be ready for the future like never again. You know, generally how the big 3-letter acronym companies do. So they kicked off a project, and several $1 million later, they're on their way to have a roadmap. The CIO was interested in saying, well, I wanted to know more than just doing technology upgrade. So they gave us a small scope and say, can you actually engage this group of people, see what you can learn from them as an experiment? We engaged with 49 people, and we did 2 workshops with 10 people each. That's about 20. And they told other friends of theirs that they learned how to do this thing. So they got access to the system. They start sharing their lived experiences and about how this could be done better. As a result of that thing, we identified 47 new opportunities that were never even in the scope. In going first go live. 22 new ideas that were introduced into the current release, because all those things that the people wanted to do that we could do today, that they were thinking of, they will do them after they've done the upgrade. They got pulled forward. On those processes, we spent less money than we were going to spend if we didn't incorporate these new ideas. And it didn't stop there. And we were only doing one project. And then there were 4 other adjacent projects, because those people who were engaged with ours were also engaged with other projects. So they started sharing their experiences on those projects as well. So that's basically what is it that comes around creating the enthusiasm for change. And similar thing we did with the healthcare team, where a just interprofessional communication platform came about, adverse events management. Interprofessional communication was efficiency improvement. Adverse event was a patient safety. So you still got to meet the first objective, but you just increase the scope of it. Same time, same effort, same amount of money. You just deliver more results. So when we're thinking about it is where we live. So here, when we do things differently, we have all these opportunities. We can engage people and learn, and we create momentum for change. Because remember, these things is the momentum changers. You can't improve policing without changing momentum, because it's not a one group thing. It's a lot of different layers of this thing that has to take in place. So we create the momentum, we update the policies, and we build communities around it. And that is how we drive change where we live. So in this thing, we had 2 projects that we done, and one in 2020 in healthcare, and the other one in the policing. For all of these projects, we had engaged hundreds of people, and hundreds of things that came from, and many of them are repeating, but that's a good thing, because that's a different people experiencing different things. And based on all the input, we created initial roadmaps and release plan. Now we are in the process of creating a momentum, basically by whoever the team member is who's leading that activity, is basically they're saying, here's a possible roadmap. You don't need money to implement these roadmap. We don't need money to implement changes. We just need to do a different way of doing things. So building a momentum by communicating are the possibilities. So that's how we're driving through this change at where we live. Here's a reflection time. We make the scope of work we do bigger than what we initially set up. We engage people within the organization. We pull them together, and we deliver the minimum scope, but we go further. And this is always kind of my story, is to never thought that this could be possible. But I'm always looking for that, what else is possible? Whether you're doing project inside your organization and what you think you can do outside, but there's a lot we can do as a change practitioners. So here's our roadmap. Here's my 30-year plan, because I plan to work for another 30. And I'm not giving up any time in a hurry, because like, what else am I going to do? I don't buy lottery tickets, so I don't, that wouldn't change anything. Plus, I don't really need any more money than I need to live on, and I live very inexpensively, and I'm wearing the same clothes that I was wearing 15 years ago because I haven't been shopping in, because nobody has a need to go shopping anymore for the clothes because nobody goes to work anymore. So here's my 30-year plan. I'm going to work on this thing and say, well, we do digital transformation where we work. Can we actually do a little bit more than a minimum required by pulling and engaging people? When we become reasonably good at it, delivering more than just minimum on scope, on budget, then here's what happens. The corporation, your place where you work, their corporate social responsibility, their ESG index, and environment, sustainability, and governance, all this stuff is what they're getting measured now more and more. Your executives are very interested in ESG and corporate social responsibility. Just imagine if we have money allocated, we have people who are within your organization outside can work together and to do something together. There's lots of people who want to get involved, but they just don't know where to get started. So that's where you as a professional leaders come into place. Pull people together. And lastly, once we've done that, and that is where the funding for the projects for the community work comes from, our companies, because they have money allocated for these things. Because a lot of time it's not money that is needed. So my goal is for next 30 years, and I'm going to be working on these. But one interesting thing happens, each one of them feeds the other. Like if you start here and you're going to start feeding into this one, and you just become reasonably good at it here. And that is how in our world today, and this is my humble opinion, is that we have traditionally in society, we had a three-legged stool. We had a private sector, we have a government, and we had a communities. What happened over the years, private sector became way too powerful, government is weak, the community nearly disappeared. And that is how we can actually bring up that third stool again. And that's our role in it. So question for the PMI community, just like that I'm going to ask the same question for my architecture community friends and say, hey, look, are you in or you're not? If you're not in, then step aside. The future PMI professionals, are we still going to continue to work on just basically meeting online on a budget? Or are we going to go further where we work? If we're going to go further, are we going to go further where we live too? Because bottom line is, I don't see anybody else taking the baton. We all kind of say, well, it should be this and ought to be that. It could be better. Yeah, but who? So that's kind of where my way of thinking of is that we can actually get all of this started by just simply using a community-based platform that we have available to us. And it's not perfect. It could be better, and we will make it better. But it's a, remember, we started in just before COVID, and the COVID kind of helped a lot because we had a lot of time to do things. So we didn't have to spend 3 hours in the commute every day anymore. But that's where we are. So question for my PMI friends is that, are we going to go stand the sideline, or are we going to take the baton? Because there is a work for us to do as professionals. So here's an evaluation for you guys, for me. This is the second last slide. And I was reading through this article a while back, and I said, well, this is how you get people to say yes. You pitch an idea to them and give them a soft landing. So here's my ideas where I came to pitch you. Our role to drive change where we live and work. I wanted to show you a path how you can get started. And what do you think? You think I accomplished what I set out to do today? What do you guys think?
I think so, yes. I think there's some different ideas that you've generated to at least help me think outside the box.
What the rest of you guys think? Come on, let's have a conversation around this. And this is the last slide.
I think it's helpful if we drive change, but we need to drive from the back seat. Frequently, when we take leadership in changes, and I've seen this in community environments and nonprofits, there is currently a lot of indication from people to just abrogate their responsibilities and let you drive the change. We need to facilitate those other people to actually drive the change. We need to drive from the back seat.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I think, that we are change practitioners, not change leaders. Because as a practitioner, I can facilitate, I can do things, but I can't make decisions for them.
Correct.
So
you can give them the tools, but you can't, but they have to come to their own conclusions.
right.
I agree with that to some extent. I mean, I think that you've got to influence people in a way that empowers them, I guess. And even like with PMI, I mean, and that's not only the education. I mean, because when I think of PMI, I think of it definitely multifaceted. I mean, yes, there's the education, there's the certification, there's where we work, but I do think of it on a different scope. And two, in trying to motivate other people to drive towards their own change. Some of it does require backseat driving, because if not, they'd be happy to let me take the reins and do all of it. And unfortunately, there's not the time and capacity to do that, so it's a constant goal to try to influence and motivate. And even that give back, I mean, that was a great experience. That was the first one on a local level that I had been involved with, because we've always done dinner and the speaker and then virtual presentations. So that was a really nice opportunity to do something for social good and work side by side with some of our PMI practitioners and see it in action and the outcome. And I'm encouraged to do more of that too throughout this year and motivate others to do the same.
Yeah. One of the things, Chip, happens is that if we engage lots of people to learn from their lived experiences, what happens? Let me give you an example. That police work that I was referring to. This happened in one of the large Canadian cities. And the mayor became interested to know what are the people's experiences with the police. So people lined up to share their experiences with the police. Not all bad, some good, some not so good. So then he decided that, okay, so I got lots of people to telling me this. And then he said, you know what, I'm going to go to a high school. And I'm going to ask kids in high school in grade 12. So he picked a school that was the best of the best school. Like they were the cream of the crop, kids go to that school. So he figured that, okay, these are the future leaders. I want to hear from them. What is their experience with the police? And this kind of what really got to me. And he asked one girl, when you first got your driver's license, what advice did your parents give you? He said, well, they said, no more than one friend in the car, no drinking and driving, no this, no that. Okay, that's kind of same advice that I got 30 years ago from my father. And when I first learned how to drive and got my own car. Then he asked another person and said, what's your experience? She said, well, my dad told me is that when you get in the car, take your wallet where your driver's license is out of your purse, put it on the seat beside you. So if you get pulled over, you don't have to reach into your purse. You can show the driver's license. Now you can tell who that person was.
We have the same stories here,
And
only they're a lot more
and
prevalent.
then the third person, the kid, he said, there's one kid sitting in the back. He raised his hand. He said, I got something for you. He was actually quite direct. And this mayor was of brown skin, living in a very non-brown skin city. He said, look, here's the deal. You people, he made reference to him, and he said, you people from that generation came to this country. You were willing to be subjugated, insulted, and you made a deal that you will give up your control, give up your power, in return the right to live in this country. We're not doing it. We don't like that deal. So if the policeman pulls me over, I want to know my rights. I'm not going to be controlled by him, control the narrative by him or her. And that is where the problem happens. So to me, when I looked at, heard that story, and I said, well, wow, that is a lived experience of that individual. And that is a lived experience of that girl who has to take her driver's license, put it beside her seat. Those are the lived experiences people can share with us as the practitioners. And from those lived experiences, the voices cannot be drowned because they will build the momentum. Now, you can say all the things that you want, and I'm not saying the police is bad and this is bad, like I don't know, and any of those things. My 30 years encounters that I had with the police, even including police in Louisiana, and never been a bad experience. Every time I got pulled over, I was in the wrong, clearly. And then at that point, my father told me, when you're in trouble, shut up and don't say anything. You know, do what somebody tells you to do, because now is not the time for you to be a hero. And because otherwise you get a smack on the head 3 times over from your father first, and then everybody else after that, because when they get a chance at it. So that's kind of what I'm looking at and say, well, if we kind of go through this exercise, build a platform where we can engage people, get them to share a very safe, professional way that information that is out there. And then based on that, we can actually build the roadmaps. We can build the momentum. And once there's momentum there, it's hard to stop. And I'm a firm believer of is that if you want to change something, change from within. Don't think that you're going to start over again, because it ain't going to happen. That's how I see it, is getting people engaged, and the rest is, as a practitioner, it's my job to figure out how to take that information and do something with it.
But how do you keep them engaged?
Aha, that's a very yes.
Let me give you a story also. I've been appointed by a member of our state legislature to a crime prevention district. Mm-hmm. And I'm part of this district, and we have to review the crime, how to handle it in our particular area. We have some resources, we have some ways to approach it. When there is a short-term situation where 2 or 3 crimes happen, maybe you have a year's worth of nothing and 2 or 3 crimes, you get a large number of people very upset and very involved. And that lasts maybe 2 or 3 weeks. Mm-hmm. When we go back to them and say, okay, here are some of the things to do, here are some of the ways to approach it, they're no longer interested. Right. It's a very short-term view of what's happening by, at least in my particular area, the general public.
Right. And that's where we as a change practitioner come into place, that we actually pull together people at a Starbucks and buy everybody a cup of coffee and say, well, okay, we got to get these people engaged, how we do this thing. And this is one of the areas where in this particular example, and you're sharing with me, is that the teenagers are extremely good at coming up with the ways to do different things differently. Their brain works differently. I am I know sometimes we see that our worlds are going to hell in a handbasket, but I am so enthusiastic about the future and so progressed about it that I think that we're going to be just fine. Because these kids, they think differently, they act differently, and they challenge the status quo, but sometimes it needs to be challenged. But perhaps in that case, Chip, we just have to roll up our sleeves and do it differently, because just because the crime happened, it's not that only that one time. People have experiences, and we need to figure out a way to, like, in my experience is that if we need money to do something, that's a wrong starting point. I always use the Wright brothers example. The Wright brothers didn't ask for anybody to give you money to build a plane. They just did it. And the people who were given millions of dollars in the federal money to build a plane never got one off the ground.
Now, money, I very much agree with you. Culture is a much more powerful and valuable asset than money.
Absolutely.
Money will, you cannot just throw money at everything.
Yeah. Yep. What about the rest of the group? Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, Pallavi here. I just wanted to add one point to the example or the situation that was stated is how do you keep up the interest in the in the general public is not to state what the problem is, what is the root cause of it. Bring that out, and I'm just talking here out of my mind. I mean, it might be you all have a lot of experience than me, but I'm just putting it out there, thinking like if I tell you, okay, this is happening, let's solve it. No, nobody might hear to it. But what is causing it? From where is it coming? If we do that kind of a due diligent digging into it and then bring it out, maybe it might have a better impact than just bringing out the problem itself.
Right. I think that's the point, is that the cause comes from is that understanding people's lived experiences with something. What's in the way? What supports? What gets in the way? What doesn't help? What has worked somewhere else differently? And what would you like to see? Those are the experiences of people. Those are authentic. And I was reading a study many years ago. Is that Toyota was the last company to come up with a minivan. Okay, this is I didn't know that story, but that's apparently that's a fact. So now all of a sudden Toyota is going to come up with a minivan. So how did you come up with a minivan? Then everybody else already made one before, and now your turn to make one. And they wanted to see what people's experiences are with the minivan. So their engineers spent hundreds of hours sitting in the shopping center parking lots and seeing what people's experiences are with their cars. All they want to do is observe how people experience with their minivans, because obviously minivans is a suburban shopping mall. Now has been replaced by SUV, but at one time was a minivan. So that's exactly what probably what you're referring to is a understand root cause of good people's experiences. Then you can drive some understanding of the problem. And that's where the wicked problem comes in, because wicked problems have no solutions. We just name them. Anybody else's experiences? What do you think about our role in this whole driving change at work and living? What comes to mind?
I did see a comment from Tori where she said that it reminds me of her work when she did a DEI council, and that was part of her last job. Once they got people engaged, they were able to take that information and create a change that was met with acceptance. And then she said she thinks that they were successful because they removed the professional titles for the moment and just allowed them to speak in safe spaces.
Yeah, I think that's thank you so much for that comment, because I kind of feel the same way when we build the platform. The one thing that we did in the platform is at first there's no name in it, and when you shared your experience, you don't share your name in it, so we don't want anybody to know where it came from. And there's no like in it, because if your boss put a comment in there and next minute everybody's lining up liking it because sucking up to the boss, that's a normal practice. And no forwarding it. And so everybody's idea is unique. And if you have something similar, say it again. If same thing has been said 4 times, then it's probably is something that is 4 people are experiencing it. Well, if you guys know how to, like, the last slide is to, this is how you're going to get a hold of me. I'm on LinkedIn, and if you wanted to LinkedIn, and I kind of do this thing often, but I'd be glad to connect with anybody who wants to learn more and be part of it and show us how to do differently and better, because that's my 30-year plan. So I'm going to be around for a bit. If I don't go before, but if I go before, then one of you will pick it up and run with it. That's over for me. Thank you very much for having me, Tanya, and I really enjoyed this conversation with your group. And hopefully one day I can get back to Baton Rouge again. Perhaps we can have a drink again.
Absolutely. So I wanted to answer a few questions that have come through. For the PMI chapter members that are members of Baton Rouge, we will report the PDUs for you within 3 to 5 business days. For those of you that are guests, we provide a claim code. And the reason that we do that, and we have to do that, is because even the process takes a few hours afterwards. And if we don't have a member number unique to our chapter, it's hard to match it up. So I wanted to read out that claim code, and it's also in the chat. That's C10662SCSC. And we have been recording this video as well. Typically we're able to get the video up on the website within the next day, so I like to at least give it a little bit of a buffer room for members of my team to help me out with some of those duties. So I would say, maybe by Friday. But if y'all have the opportunity to check back to the website and see if you missed it or missed any portion of it, you'll be able to catch it again. So, and I wanted to thank you, Jason, for making yourself available and for presenting this. And I know Dean had asked a little bit earlier to see a demonstration. So I appreciate you sharing your LinkedIn address too, because that'll give people the opportunity that if they're wanting to see more live action, they can connect with you in that, and maybe spark up that initiative.
Sure.
So, and then last little housekeeping, because I write myself notes before, I just wanted to remind everybody that is actually members of the chapter. We're doing an initiative to try and do a little bit more with our data to help us find topics and things of that nature. So if y'all could, most of our information comes from PMI National. So if you've had job changes, or if you've had a title change, or even if you're on this call and you're like, oh, I had my work email and now I've changed jobs, just occasionally remembering to go on PMI.org and update that information, because that'll feed over to us. And that way too, if we've got everybody's current industry, it helps us brainstorm ideas, for future topics and things of that nature that are specific, to our industry and who we serve. So thank you for sharing that, Shala. And wanted to give Shala an opportunity too, just to I know I said some about the upcoming events a little bit earlier, but for those of you that may have joined later.
Sure, making sure I'm off mute. So this coming Thursday, not tomorrow, but next week, February 23rd, We have an in-person session at Cafe American, and it will be on the expansion of I-10. I know all of us who live in Baton Rouge have a lot of concerns and trepidations around what is it going to do to our interstate system when they start shutting down lanes, especially since our city is so gridlocked as it is. And then in February, we will, in March, we will have another in-person session. The venue is to be determined, but we have a gentleman, Reed Richard, from the Breck Park Systems. So spring is coming, and I'm sure we would love to hear about all of the wonderful work that they do in the beautiful parks of Baton Rouge. I moved to Baton Rouge and was truly amazed with all of our parks that we have. We have such lovely parks. And then in April, we are going to have a social networking session, and we are going to tour the Oxbow Rum Distillery. So we have a lot of fun and exciting events coming. That's the preview of the next 3 months. So we hope to see all of you guys that can attend our sessions. We love doing this for you, and hope we are providing some exciting content.
Absolutely. So, well, I just wanted to thank all of y'all for being here tonight, and hopefully we will see those of you that can make it next week, and those of you that are joining us from out of town and out of country and out of state, hopefully to see y'all on the virtual next month. So,
Hey, Tanya,
yes.
how many spots are left available for the in-person next week?
So it's the maximum is 50, and I believe when I looked at it last, it's up to 28.
Yeah.
Just of note, if you've got other friends that you are telling about coming as well, when we change restaurants, we've got different things that we've got to comply with, and they need a 72-hour notice on what the head count is going to be, and also the menu selection. So that's a slight different thing for people that are registering. We'll have that question in there that before people can continue to register, they actually have to pick the dish that they're going to be eating. And then the next month we'll have a different experience at Portobello. But this was Shala's recommendation. We're going to try different things, so that way, with rising costs of the restaurant, just the ambiance, parking, we're going to have several different opportunities to choose from, see what works for us, and kind of mix things up a little bit. And I think that'll be a good energy. And even like with the March, that's going to be, I believe, on a Wednesday rather than a Thursday due to speaker availability, but we might be able to catch some people that may not otherwise be available on Thursdays. These with the virtual, they're still going to continue on the Tuesdays. Like I said, this was more dated on the Wednesday because of Valentine's Day. So.
And as a reminder, tomorrow I will be sending out a notification letting you with the link on how to register for the session.
Right. And so, well, I just wanted to check too. Does anybody else have any questions or any ideas to share?
I want to say thank you to Jason. This was really informative and definitely gave me a different perspective on being a part of change. And you're very right, Jason. We tend to focus on change in our work world, and we don't think about what change we can do individually outside of work. So thank you for sharing that perspective.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm hoping that we can do something for the next 30 years. It's why not? It's in us.
Well, I think too, Jason, you and I can kind of talk offline sometimes too, and connect you with the chapters that are out there too, because I think that may be something too that would be a little bit closer to the front, and that if you had some of the other PMI alliances out there in Canada really could collectively look at some of those cultures there too and make, potentially really make some waves.
Right. But see, one of the things that what I think is like organization like a PMI, we're always having to sort of think about is reinventing ourselves. Like, what else can we do better? Like, where else can we go? And like, doing a project at a workplace is good enough, but there's also more out there. That's why we are professionals. If it was a job, then we do what somebody told us to do. But as the professionals, we have some responsibilities around us to, like, I'm not a religious person, but I kind of always came across the Old Testament said, if you have skills, do you only use them, you're just as sinful as the one who didn't. So I'm not a big Bible person, but I do kind of feel that we have skills. Why not bring them out? And maybe there's one more person whose shoulder doesn't hurt anymore. And that's all it is.
I like that message. So, and I think we can do that. I mean, even in this group, I think just encouraging other people to connect and enjoy, share ideas, it sparks different ideas that helps out a lot of other people too. So
thank you so much for having me, and good night to you all, and enjoy the Mardi Gras next week.
all right. Y'all have a good night. We'll see you
Bye-bye.
later. Bye.